So who is the breakout star in week 1 of the preseason against the Los Angeles Chargers? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Travis Rogers. You can follow me on Twitter under that name right there, at Travis Rogers. Of course, we're going to want you to subscribe to Locked On Rams as well. Click that little subscription button in your podcast feed. It might be a bookmark, a check mark, a little plus signal. You know how to do it. Go ahead and click that subscribe button right now. Plus, when you're done with that, head on over and check us out on YouTube. We have a Locked On Rams YouTube channel as well. We've got a good one for you today. I want to talk about what we saw on Saturday night against the Los Angeles Chargers in the first preseason game of the year, a game that the Rams managed to win 27-22. Actually, a pretty good football game, all things being considered that it was a preseason game. One thing in particular, just the cleanliness of the game, just how well it was played for the first preseason game. We'll get into that coming up in just a little bit. I want to talk about some of the guys who did not get on the field as well, and what exactly does that mean for them heading in to the regular season here as we get closer and closer. We are inside of 30 days before the start of the regular season. That's coming up as well. But let's start right here, but not before I remind you that today's episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so let's talk about Lance Mccutchen, right? Lance Mccutchen was by far the breakout star of the first preseason game against the Chargers. He caught a pair of touchdown passes, including a 60-yarder. He caught a 2-point conversion along the way. So he was all over the field and made a series of not just, a lot of catches, but a couple of really highlight reel catches along the way. Seemed incredibly comfortable. And this is a guy that no one really thought was going to be a big deal when it came to their offensive weaponry this season. Look, there's probably a better than more likely than not that Lance Mccutchen does not make this team. Maybe they're able to keep him on the practice squad. That's certainly a possibility. But maybe somebody else goes and picks him up. And here's what I want to get into. Somebody that played as well as he did, that went out and had a 2-touchdown game, that made some really eye-popping plays, including that 60-yard touchdown where he went up against pretty good coverage, comes down with the football, and just runs away from two guys in the process to score a nice long touchdown. That's a performance that most teams say, you know what, we got to keep that guy around. That's a guy that can clearly help us win some football games along the way. The Rams, I think, are probably looking at this like, yeah, we know he can play. They're not surprised. Sean McVay was talking about how he anticipated him having a big game. They don't have any place to put him. They really don't. That's how deep the Rams are at that position. And that's really without even Odell Beckham being a part of what it is that they're doing right now. I mean, if you're somebody that's going to make this roster, right? If you're somebody that's a wide receiver and not named Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, or Van Jefferson, I would be very, very worried about how many opportunities there are going to be and whether or not you have a long-term future with the Los Angeles Rams at that particular position, because Lance Mccutchen just went out and put together an unbelievable performance in a game that was remarkably well played. And we'll talk about that coming up in a little bit, but competitive. Like those games can get very, very sloppy, and the Rams did not, and the Chargers did not. And it was well played, and he still went out there and was able to shine. So what happened? Cooper Kupp is going to get, he's going to be on the field whenever he wants to be on the field and is capable of being on the field. Same thing for Allen Robinson. When Van Jefferson comes back, he obviously is the number 3 wide receiver. And then, of course, you've got the Odell Beckham piece of all of this, about if/when he comes back, he's going to get a whole bunch of time. Tutu Atwell and Ben Skoranek did not even play in that game. They were dressed and ready to go, but they did not get on the field and do anything. So that means a certain thing. We'll talk about those guys coming up in the next segment here on Locked On Rams. But this is a position of strength for the Rams. This is a position where, despite going out there the way that Mccutchen did and really shining and really popping, that they have they're just more good players than there are places to put him. And I think that's kind of what the Rams have been so good at finding. And whether it's at a position where they have a great deal of depth at wide receiver, or maybe it's a position that maybe they're going into the preseason, and certainly by the time we get to the regular season, they'll have figured some of this out. But defensive back, where they just get guys that no one really thinks, oh, it's not the, the number one corner from Alabama or LSU or Georgia or wherever these guys come from, Ohio State, right? And putting him in there and say, okay, he's going to be all right. They go down there and find guys much deeper in the draft, or guys that are undrafted, and bring them in and say, okay, let's go. Let's coach them up. Let's put them in our program. Let's put them in our culture. Let's surround them with other good players. Let's surround them with other good coaches and see whether or not they can give us NFL caliber performances. And Lance, I don't think he's going to make the team. I don't think that, maybe he'll make the practice squad, which, good for him if he does. But I don't think that he's going to be a regular contributor to what they do. And yet he's out there and he's performing at a very high level. And this is just another example of how good the Rams have been in creating culture and creating opportunities for guys that maybe aren't particularly highly drafted. And maybe it's not going to happen here, but maybe it can go somewhere else. Look at what's happening with the Chargers. How many different guys, whether it's Troy Reeder, Sebastian Joseph Day, one or two others whose name escaped me at the moment right now, that were over on that Charger ride. There's just not enough spots sometimes for a guy, Morgan Fox. That was the other one that I was thinking of. That they just can't, there's just not enough quality snaps for them one spot. But because they've been in this environment, because they're good players, because the Rams can identify these guys a little bit ahead of schedule with some other people, they can go other places and start to shine right away. Good job for Lance Mccutchen going out there and being able to do what he did. But I don't know if anybody can crack that lineup at that position, even with a standout performance, especially considering that that's exactly what he was able to do. Okay, so he was on the field and ready to go and ready to play. What about some guys that did not get on the field on Saturday night? What does it mean for them? What does it mean for their opportunities in the regular season? That is coming up next. Life is usually pretty good, right? But sometimes it's challenging. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes you need a little help, right? Where life just doesn't feel like it's coming maybe as easily as you would like it to. Maybe it's just one of those things that you just can't find a way to navigate through. And you just don't quite feel like yourself, right? Do you have somebody to talk to in those situations? It's full of twists and turns, life is, and you need someone to talk to. And this is where BetterHelp comes in, right? I can't tell you how many people I know in my life that have benefited so tremendously by talking with somebody, by being able to talk to a therapist and work through what it is that they're working through and just start to feel better about themselves. And I know whether it's me, people in my family, people very, very close to me, after you talk, you're going to feel so much better. And this is what BetterHelp can do for you. You log on to BetterHelp.com. You go there right now and you put the app on your phone. And you can start getting therapy in just, you're going to get your therapist in just a couple of days. It's so easy. You go, you talk about what kind of therapist you want, what you want to talk about, and they're going to match you with a licensed therapist within 48 hours. It is that easy, and you can be on your way to feeling so much better. And they have a very special offer for my listeners right now. You can get 10% off of your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Let me tell you again, that's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Your first month of online therapy at betterhelp.com/lockedon. And by all means, start to feel better. It will absolutely make a difference. All right, so Lance Mccutchen goes out there and makes a big impression because he gets an opportunity to play. And this is what it is, right? If you're out there last Friday night, if you're going to be out there this upcoming last Saturday night, I should say, or this upcoming Friday night against the Houston Texans, of course, that's their next preseason game. The Rams will be the home team at SoFi Stadium this time. That game kicks off at 7 o'clock. Kirk and I will have the pregame show starting at 5 o'clock, so you can listen to that as well. But, if you're out there, good luck, make the team, get ready. Logan Bruss got some first NFL action, and according to Sean McVay, did pretty well along the way. But I want to talk about some of the guys that didn't play. Let's talk, number one, about John Wolford. Bryce Perkins played quarterback for the Rams the entire game on Saturday night. And by the way, not too shabby. Bryce Perkins was really, really good. I mean, not just, yeah, okay, for a third, fourth string quarterback, maybe he's a guy that, you could go out there and practice with and whatnot. No. Bryce Perkins looked like a guy that can play in the NFL. He did not look rattled. He did not look sped up. He did not get the big eyes that you always worry about when you're talking about quarterbacks who don't have a ton of experience. He went out there and ran an offense and looked very, very comfortable doing it. And, oh, by the way, he's got some moves. He's got some speed. He's got the ability to move his feet. He's got the ability to make some guys miss along the way. And stop me if these don't sound like some characteristics that you'd really like to have on your team, and certainly at that position along the way. So, but because Perkins was out there and played at a high level the whole game, we didn't see John Wolford at all, which I think is really interesting because, look, two different ways to look at Wolford, right? You can look at Wolford as the guy who is remarkably green. He's started 2 NFL games, really only played in 1. He played in 1 a couple of years ago at the end of the season against the Arizona Cardinals and played well, right? It was not, 3 touchdowns, 400 yards, great, but it was a couple hundred yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. His team won the game, a game they needed to win. So good, but not great. Then he started the playoff game against the Seattle Seahawks and got to throw 6 passes before he got hurt and left the game. Jared Goff came in, and we know what happened after there. So incredibly green and inexperienced, and what happens if Matthew Stafford's elbow becomes a problem, or anything else that could pop up with Stafford at any moment. I mean, this is the NFL after all. That guy, do you want to get him some reps in the preseason, or do you believe that Sean McVay knows what he's doing, and that if he doesn't think he needs to go out there, then he doesn't need to go out there? It's one of the few times where I watch what Sean McVay does. It makes me go, okay, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because A, he knows better than I do, but B, he knows quarterbacks incredibly well. That being said, that he's not going to play in the and if he didn't play in the one on Saturday night, I don't think he's going to play at all. They must feel like he's ready to go. They must feel like he's ready to step in there right now. It'll be very curious what happens with Bryce Perkins. Can they keep a third quarterback on the roster? That's pretty unusual in the NFL right now. Now, the Rams did do it last season because they didn't want somebody else to go and grab Perkins, and they absolutely will if they put him on the practice squad because, as I'm sure most of you know, if a player goes to the practice squad, another team can take him and put him on their active roster if they want to do that. I do not think they'll be able to stash him on the practice squad. I just can't imagine that that's going to happen, which means now you're down to Matthew Stafford, who may or may not have a bad elbow, and then an incredibly green backup quarterback. Maybe they're thinking if Wolford has to play and isn't up for it, they can go into the quarterback market and try to find somebody. But I did think it was surprising that we did not see him at all. The other 2 guys that we did not see, couple of wide receivers, mentioned it a second ago, Tutu Atwell and Ben Skoranek. Tutu Atwell was in uniform. Sean McVay was talking about how maybe they were going to have an opportunity to have him field some punts along the way, just catch them and not really return or anything else. Okay, McVay was asked afterwards why he didn't play, and he said because he's going to play a big role on what the Rams are going to do during the regular season. We know how he approaches the regular season, so okay, fine. Here's the thing I took out of the Tutu Atwell show on Saturday night. He didn't play at all, but as they were talking about him on the broadcast, it was revealed that he weighs 151 pounds. 151 pounds in the NFL, with men much larger than 151 pounds trying to bring him to the ground with extreme prejudice, right? With just trying to bring it to him. I know he's fast. I know that he's not going to go in there and crack back on a linebacker to try to free Cooper. I know that's not his job. I know his job is to run down the field as fast as he can and pull 1 or 2 guys with him and open up the middle of the field. I understand that's his role. Let me say it again. 151 pounds. Okay. That's an 8th grader. Okay. That is a small high school wide receiver, 151 pounds. So keep your eyes on him right there. I do think it's interesting that they have plans for him like that. I'll put it this way, and I'm not Sean McVay. You've heard me say this before on Locked On Rams. It's another good example of why you need to subscribe each and every day. He's honest. He tells you what's on. If he says he's got plans for Atwell, I believe that he's got plans for Atwell. I'll believe it when I see it. A 151-pound man in that league, I get it. He's fast. I get it. You got to catch him to hit him. Okay. They seem to be able to catch him last year in the limited time that he was out there. They seem to be able to hit him hard enough to break him in the limited time that he's out there. 151 pounds and all the hype about him in the preseason and the catches and mic'd up and all that stuff. And we didn't get a single look at him. So we'll see. Maybe he'll get a little action against the Houston Texans coming up. All right. So coming up next, I want to talk about just the overall feel of the game on Saturday night, because I thought there was something that you usually don't see in a preseason game and something that is an incredible testament to the job that Sean McVay has done with the Los Angeles Rams. That's coming up right after this on Locked On Rams. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events, the #1 online source for lines, odds, and games. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. Will Zalatoris finally got his first win on tour. Did you have action on Will Zalatoris? Maybe you should. Maybe this is why you should go to BetOnline and check all of this out, because it continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They've got you covered on all of it. Head on over to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening right now. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so this isn't any particular one play that took place on Saturday night against the Chargers, but I want to talk about a couple of different things, a couple of different teams, I should say, and compare what we saw on Saturday night to what we saw some other places. The Rams committed 2 penalties for 10 yards. 2 penalties for 10 yards, right? 2 pretty minor infractions, and 2 penalties in an NFL game is pretty extraordinary. 2 penalties, playing with guys that are 3rd, 4th, 5th, soon to be non-NFL players, is unreal in the preseason. These games get so sloppy and so disorganized, usually by about the beginning of the second quarter, and it deteriorates from there. And it gets worse and worse and worse the deeper into the game that you go. That was not the case with the Rams. They were lined up correctly. They were procedurally sound. Guys were running the offense. The quarterback play was good. The offensive line play was pretty good. The defensive play was pretty good. The coaches were into it. The players were into it. And guys that will never, ever put on a uniform, a Rams uniform in an NFL game, were out there executing flawlessly. Okay, period, full stop. The Chargers had 9 penalties. The Dallas Cowboys on the same day, on Saturday night, played a game. They had 17 penalties, okay? Mike McCarthy, does he strike you as somebody that's on top of the details? Does he strike you as somebody that knows exactly how every component of his organization should be working? No, me neither, right? No, he's just not that guy. Brandon Staley, a guy who's going for it and blowing it and deciding to, we'll call a timeout and overtime in week 18 when you just, all of the things that we know. Does it sound like he's got a full grasp on everything that's going on in his game? He's learning. I think he's a pretty good coach, but no, 9 penalties, right? And again, these are guys that aren't going to make his team either. It's Sean McVay's guys know exactly what they're being asked to do. They know exactly how to execute. They know exactly how to do the ins and outs of an NFL game, even though they're probably never going to play in an NFL game. And that is a testament to Sean McVay, who has clearly drilled it into all of his assistants, who have clearly coached all of their players up on that. That team, that was a team that did not have NFL caliber talent on the field, and it looked like an NFL team. There's nobody that deserves credit for that more than Sean McVay does. There's nobody that should be more pleased about the state of their program. The Dallas Cowboys had 17 penalties, 17. The Rams had 2. And that's the coach. That's culture. That's a sense of accountability. That's your very best players, whether it's Jalen Ramsey or Aaron Donald or Matthew Stafford or whoever it might be, saying, no, this is how we do things here. You better do things correctly here. No, we're not doing penalties. We're not doing stupid stuff. We're not doing not paying attention in meetings. We're not doing not paying attention in film study. That they're on top of all of this stuff. 17 for the Cowboys, 2 for the Cowboys, or for the Rams. It's just an unbelievable juxtaposition of just where it comes from the coach, right on down to the guy that may be driving a beer truck here in a few weeks. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm just saying that even the guys that are just barely hanging on to their NFL dream are doing it exactly right. And guys in a Dallas Cowboys situation who are going to end up playing in games for them, some of those guys, they don't know what nope, lined up wrong, penalties, just emoji, just none of it. None of it. Just an incredible moment, I thought, for Sean McVay. Kirk Morrison and I, Kirk played in the NFL for a long time. And we looked at each other in the middle of the game and said, this is an oddly well-played first preseason game of the year with guys that you really don't expect to make teams, and they're playing this cleanly. That's Sean McVay. And Sean McVay, we'll talk about this on Locked On Rams tomorrow, that his intensity during a preseason game while simultaneously, air quotes, having some fun, I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that before. Just an entirely unique guy. And each time you see him talk, each time you see him coach a game, it kind of adds a whole nother layer to it. And that was a good example of it. 2 penalties in the first preseason game of the year with guys that will never, ever, ever end up playing in the NFL. Very, very impressive along the way. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rams. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. And as always, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Now make Locked On Fantasy Football your second listen. Find the intellectual fantasy expert, Vinny Eiler, who brings over 20 years of NFL experience and a unique angle to give you the moves no one else has. Get ready for your fantasy draft with Locked On Fantasy Football. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams' house.